reason we have a number of firefighters standing behind us is this is going to really directly impact on them. This is going to be a way of them saying, I've worked in this industry for 5 years, I have got this cancer, there's a direct correlation to my disease, and that's the reason why we're doing it. The government actually hasn't committed at all to this legislation at this stage. We hope that they will change their mind clearly in the federal process. It was bipartisan, and that's what we hope will happen in Victoria, but at this stage we don't have a commitment. It shouldn't be about party politics, it should be about firefighters, and it should be about making sure that we protect them. Certainly legislation always has complexities, but there are ways of resolving that, and one of the ways you do it is by sitting down and actually negotiating with all the parties.
For each of us to date who have contracted cancer, we have had to battle individually with the fire services insurer on each occasion. And as Colleen has mentioned already, one of the dilemmas is that unless you can quote exactly the incident you were at and precisely the materials that were burning, in some of my cases, for example, they were 40 odd years ago. Everyone who was there who might be able to corroborate my statements are dead. And so you find it a critically difficult period. So today is a move to finally alleviate that problem. It's tinged with sadness, of course, because so many of my colleagues have died waiting to see this happen.
This legislation is in place for federal firefighters. The ludicrous situation we have here is that if a firefighter's at Tullamarine Airport or Avalon or Laverton, they're actually covered. Yet a firefighter who's either a volunteer or a career firefighter in Victoria working across the road or even at the same fire hasn't got the same coverage.
It's important for volunteers to know that when they're going out to do their job, volunteers and career firefighters alike, they're going out to do their job, and they need to know that the support is behind them and they have the protection they require. The protection is there, it's accessing that protection that is proven, in Brian's case, is one of those to be very difficult. And we need to remove that. When somebody is sick and suffering a cancer, unfortunately if that's the case may be, the last thing they need to be doing is focusing on a court battle to prove beyond doubt that they've caused that fire with their line of duty.
For this legislation, this important and vital legislation to become a reality, it's in the hands of the Liberal National Government. We need them to come and say they support this legislation, or if there's issues with this legislation, let's work it through, as the Labor opposition is prepared to do. We absolutely support the principle and the spirit and the desire of this legislation to support our career and volunteer firefighters, but for this to become a reality in the Victorian community, it will need the Liberal National Government to come to the table to work through whatever issues they may have.
You see the uniform these guys work, that'll protect them up to 1,000 degrees Celsius, but it has to breathe. The fact that it breathes means whatever's in the atmosphere goes into their skin. So firefighters, volunteer career firefighters haven't got an option. Brian didn't have an option. To protect the community, they have to get exposed, knowing that the chances of contracting cancer after many exposures is greatly heightened.
I've been in the job 36 years, attended many fires, and as Brian said earlier, you know, in those days we were exposed to so many different elements we didn't know what was happening. Today the young firefighters coming into the job, they need that protection for their futures and for their family's future. So we saw it go through the Federal Parliament, and it went through very quickly. Here we are now in Victoria. It'll be a great asset for all firefighters, both volunteer and career firefighters in the state. I knew Brian when I was a young firefighter. He was the chief officer of the service, very strong, robust man, and now to see him in this condition is terrible, as has been the same with other firefighters I've known in the last 36 years who are no longer with us. This will only give them now a sense of relief and security, knowing that if something does go wrong, that themselves and their families are protected for the future.